This is the Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
Hey folks, Chuck Holton here. Thanks for watching the Hot Zone. I'm sorry it's a little late getting this one out. It's been a really busy week for me, and this time it's been a busy week in a good way. I had a really massive tour to give to a very wealthy family from the United States who came down to Latin America, and I've been managing all the logistics for this thing. Like, I'm talking 20 drivers, helicopters, boats, float plane, I mean everything. And it's been a massive undertaking. And so I've been a little distracted this week, so forgive me. It seems like this week is busy every year, but it's not usually busy for a good reason. If I look back through the last several years, it's sometimes busy for a really bad reason. The Virginia Tech shootings happened this week. The big earthquake that took place in Ecuador happened this week a few years ago, about I think 5 years ago. Here's a little bit of what that looked like.
With the death toll from Saturday's massive quake continuing to rise, search and rescue teams from across Latin America are working around the clock to find any remaining survivors. But there's a lot of territory to cover. Every town and village up and down the northern coast of Ecuador was affected. Hundreds of thousands are without water and power. Heavy equipment operators are in short supply, while residents pick through the unstable rubble to salvage anything of value. Just weeks ago, I was in northern Iraq viewing the aftermath of a city destroyed by ISIS. The similarities are striking. In Iraq, this destruction was caused by bombs and explosives. Here in Puerto Viejo, the damage was done by the strongest earthquake in more than 60 years.
What's going on behind me is exactly what the rescuers hope not to find, and that is a body. This one happened to be an 11-year-old girl who was buried in the rubble. And so now comes the delicate process of having to remove the remains.
What might be even more difficult to handle are those with loved ones still alive, but trapped under tons of rubble.
They're scrambling, these workers right now, and getting a bunch of people in here because they just received a phone call from this building. There's a woman's husband trapped in there, and he's calling for help.
There are search and rescue teams from 9 countries across Latin America here already. But with time running out for the hundreds of people still trapped, many more are needed. This woman is afraid that by the time they reach her husband, it'll be too late. One of the dangers facing those still trapped is dehydration, but that's also now a huge problem for those who escaped the quake. Water stations across the area are being overwhelmed, and people wait in line for hours for a simple bag of food or a bottle of water.
And also the Boston Marathon bombing happened this week in history, about, 8 years ago? And I was there just after that happened as well.
We had gone down to be military presence on the marathon route itself, finished our job. We were relatively early in the race. When we went home, I was back in my living room before anything happened. We had soldiers from my unit were in the race. In fact, one of them was about a half mile from the finish line when the explosions happened.
I did hear kind of something in the far distance. I had no idea what it was. And I did have my phone on me, and my sister told me what happened. And I was scared, frightened, had, realized that really no one around me had no idea.
We didn't realize anything horrible had happened until our daughter called us. She had been at Fenway Park at the Red Sox game. And when she was checking to make sure we were okay, and that was the first we heard that something had happened, and we immediately turned on the TV and, were really horrified along with everybody else about what had occurred.
My sister was about a block away from the second explosion, and then my fiance's mom and his aunt were in between the two to just get that information kind of puts all that out the window, and then you're scared, frightened, startled.
You get upset, defensive, and angry, and at the same time, in this position, protective. You want to make sure it doesn't happen to anybody else.
So this week's busyness was quite a bit better, and I'm really happy to have had a chance to do this and take some time off a little bit of my normal work, but we'll get back to that soon enough. I also wanted to point out one other kind of just fun thing for the weekend, and that is that there's a group of 15 French explorers and volunteers who have decided to do an experiment on the human psyche and what it's like in the passage of time, how people sort of perceive the passage of time. And to do this, they're locking themselves away in a cave in southern France for 40 days. And the idea is to study how humans perceive the passage of time without any cues as far as light or dark, without any timepieces or anything to tell them what time it is. And it seems like they could have saved themselves a couple million euros, which is what this thing ended up costing, by just simply looking at what happened over the entire globe over the past year. I mean, all of us have been through this now, where we entered into a 15-day quarantine to stop the spread, and I swear it seemed like it was 10 months. They've got a lot of data they could have mined without having to lock themselves in a cave. But here's a little bit of what that looked like.
We'll stay 40 days in the Lombrive cave without any access to the sunlight or any time indicators for several goals. First, to understand the cerebral plasticity related to time and the impact of desynchronization in facing a new life situation, and the capacity of a human group to recover functional synchronization when we remove all these time indicators. We study all the many parameters. We don't study only chronobiology, we don't study only physiology. We work on a very integrative way on cognition, epigenetics, psychology, ethology, sociology, and also the environment with ecology and geography of the cave. So we really want to have a big picture of how they live, how they can synchronize them, how they can adapt finally to this kind of environment and situation. Also, it's a mixed group. We have women and men, and it's very important also for research. Our objectives are to understand how people, especially non-professional people, I mean, from the everyday life, can adapt themselves to a major change, how they can perceive from a cognition and aspect all the ability to adapt facing change and facing new situations. We have very few information from inside the cave. We just get some sounds recorded by Christian Clot, or some pictures, or etc. Some videos also sometimes, but not on a daily basis. We know two things. We know that they are all completely desynchronized, and so it's very hard, very difficult to carry out all the daily activities. They have to produce energy, to collect water. All this coordination work inside the group is very difficult, but it's normal. It's a part of the study and the mission. So it's exactly what we want to understand. So it's perfect in a sense. And also The condition, the living condition in the cave are very hard. Humidity is very, very high with 100% of humidity, and the temperature, which is almost constant at 10 degrees, impact hugely the psychology of the group of people, and it's also very difficult to live. They have to do some a huge scientific work inside. They have many protocols to carry out on ethology, cardiology, physiology, psychology, and we study then all these aspects before, inside, and after their stay in the cave.
So those guys will be out of quarantine the end of April, coming up here pretty soon. It'll be interesting to see what their findings were, and I don't envy them that experiment. I would, after all the quarantining and everything, I've had enough quarantining for the rest of my life, thank you. I hope you're having a good weekend, and we'll be back to it next week. We got a lot of good stuff coming up, so stay tuned. I'm Chuck Holton.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media.
Copyright 2021.